I'll be honest, I'm super sensitive and I take criticism very poorly. Sometimes I can handle it, but for the most part, criticism leaves me an inward wreck. Small, insignificant comments can linger in my mind for days, like this one. Someone recently brought a criticism to my attention that I mulled over a bit because, they kinda had a point. Anyone who knows me knows that one of the biggest factors in my enjoyment of an episode is how it handles the Aesop of the day.
Firebrand, I'm in the middle of an appointment at the moment.
Oh no, I can wait. He clearly needs more help than I do.
Hey! Gather round, children. Today we're going to be talking about morality. Okay, who put eggshells over here? Whatever. Joining me today is the ever-eloquent DRWolf, who has plenty to say on the subject of morality as well.
Thank you kindly for the invitation, Firebrand. On the subject of general morality, I would certainly encourage others to find good morals from their friends, family, teachers, and mentors throughout their lives. Yet I can certainly appreciate the wonderful lessons I've seen in MLP over the years, and even how such topics are addressed. In many ways, the writers have presented conflicts and resolutions that have greatly surpassed my expectations. So when I notice a particular conflict or moral that doesn't leave much of an impression, or even leaves a bad taste afterwards, I can understand others' desire for a more well-thought-out presentation, because I myself have seen that the MLP writers have done better in the past and are capable of more in the future.
But despite that, there's a sort of dismissive attitude going around regarding the Aesops of each episode. I suppose we should start with the most common things said in opposition to critiquing MLP's morality. 1. Cartoons are not supposed to act as parents. 2. Morality is less important than entertainment value. 3. Adults shouldn't be taking morality lessons from a kids show. Alright, let's talk about the first one. Cartoons aren't supposed to be parents. Now, that is true. I can completely get behind the idea that you shouldn't let cartoons be a bigger influence than a parent. Parents can and should be continuously present in their children's lives to mold them into people of upstanding character. There are many things you shouldn't let your child stumble upon until they are ready. To let technology raise your child would be completely irresponsible, but dismissing a toxic moral is just as bad, if not dangerous. As stated before, people gain their morality from many different sources. Your friends, your school, your community, your philosophical environment, and even the TV shows you watch. Children are smart, yes, but they are also very impressionable, and a bad message can plant a tiny, insidious seed that can bloom into a huge problem.
Which I suppose begs the question. Why do we care more about the morality in MLP compared to a lot of other shows that have come out over the past several years?
That's a good question. Why do we care about morality in MLP and not in a different Hasbro show, like, say, Dan vs? Dan is definitely not what we would consider to be a role model. I mean, he tried to drop a nuclear bomb on a family of squirrels. That's hilarious, but Dan is the main character of a show directed at young, impressionable children. This character is lazy, arrogant, entitled, selfish, and very violent. What excuses Dan vs? Well, for one, it's made very clear that Dan is not supposed to be a role model or learn lessons. We still like him because he's funny, and in many ways he's acting out the desires of the audience. There are many times we've wanted to deliver disproportionate retribution to all the little frustrations in life. What? I don't do them. I just think about them. A little. Sometimes. All the time. Anyways, second thing that excuses Dan vs is the fact that Dan's continuously called out on his poor behavior. The show very often states when a character, especially Dan, is doing something immoral. MLP does the same thing, except instead of just for comedy like Dan vs, MLP does so when trying to teach a moral. Characters' personalities are challenged, and very often they fail to act properly the first time around. They realize their shortcoming and then work around it, which then becomes the Aesop of the day. But even then, you'd think we'd have heard complaints about Dan vs teaching bad morals, so why don't we?
Well, there is the fact that MLP has become far more popular than most anyone could have expected. And we tend to pay closer attention and give more scrutiny over any bit of media that has drawn a larger crowd. Though I'm sure it goes far deeper than that. For many of us, we tend to care more about something the more time we invest into it. With nearly anything and everything we've put a great deal of time and effort into, we want to believe even more that activity or creation was worthwhile. I suppose in part, some of us care about the morals taught in MLP because we've come to respect the medium so much, and thus want to feel justified whenever the show ends up falling short in some way. With that said, however, I can agree that we should be demanding better from any bit of media that is trying to teach as well as entertain. There is no doubt that part of the purpose behind MLP was to spread a message. I'm sure there were many other priorities in mind for some of the creators and producers behind the show.
Something toys.
But the fact that these messages have become prevalent in the show, even from the very beginning, at least to me, means that we should be focusing somewhat on whether these messages are worthwhile. Even though a great many fans out there aren't really interested in learning anything when they sit down to watch an episode, and that's perfectly fine if that's what they're looking for in MLP, there's always going to be others who sit back and ponder what they would have done had they been in a similar conflict or circumstance.
Which brings up the next issue, when people dismiss MLP's morals because it's for kids. Okay, I'm trying not to be condescending here, but I really can't believe I have to say this. Adults aren't perfect. We lie, we steal, we betray, we get bitter, we get cruel, we destroy our relationships. And you know what? There are MLP episodes that tell us not to do these things and why we shouldn't, yet we still do them. There are plenty of morals in MLP that adults still need to learn. Adults still gossip and slander. Adults still get jealous of their friends. In fact, adults, more than children, need to learn when they have to do something pretty mean in order to be kind. I can name plenty of adults who still need to learn basic lessons of human decency that I learned from VeggieTales. So why are Aesops dismissed as for kids? Is it just immaturity?
I think it's something else, personally. Perhaps many fans out there spend so much of their day filled with the stresses of life, and they'd much rather not have to think when they sit down and enjoy a world filled with pastel-colored ponies. There is a genuine comfort in enjoying a world where life doesn't seem quite so overwhelming. For some of us, myself included, we enjoy dissecting the show and talk about what works and what doesn't. For many others, it really isn't supposed to be something to ponder. But I would argue that even when we aren't really thinking about it or even expecting it, the people we spend our time with, the environment we choose to partake in, and yes, even the media we consume on a daily basis will always have very subtle effects on who we are and who we will be. We believe that the morals presented in MLP are important enough to question from time to time. And I, for one, can greatly appreciate those moments when the show can vastly exceed my expectations and encourage positive discussion amongst the fans.
And we hope that what we said here also encourages positive discussion. If it doesn't, well, I might have to be a parent. What? Come on, it was a joke! Okay, seriously, that's starting to creep me out. Stop it! Ugh, it's like condensed parental disappointment made manifest in one toy canine. Why aren't you blinking? Stop looking at me like that!
My office. Now.
Yes, sir.